My name is Chandru Arni, and this audio-visual autobiography is all about me and myself. I do not know of any other person who has not used the traditional method of writing his autobiography in a book. I am attempting this as the new methods of communication are presently in vogue, aiming at a paperless world. The conveyor is not the book but a pen drive. Another reason for this audio biography is the character of the person is revealed, not that of a ghostwriter. This autobiography is meant for a reader who is my relative or a friend who does not know of my pioneering achievements in digital games and motor racing, and to some extent in my venture into art. It may also be of historical, repeat, historical interest to gamers and car enthusiasts and artists. I say this with some pride. But before I venture more deeply into these divergent attainments, I wish to say something of my background. I have been lucky to have been born from two aristocracies. On my father's side, the Arni Jagir, an estate covering about 200 square miles and granted by Shahji in 1640 and later ratified by the great Maharashtrian Shivaji, son of Shahji. On my mother's side, the Purnaya dynasty, made famous by Diwan Purnaya, who served as a Diwan, which is the Prime Minister, for a great Muslim warrior, Prime Minister to Hyder Ali, and thereafter his son Tipu Sultan, and finally to the Maharaja of Mysore, where he was served as regent. It is not without some genetic order that I took to the hobby of motor racing. My grandfather, as you can see, with his cars, was a keen motoring fan. My grandmother, from my mother's side, seen driving a 1904 Bentley, was the first female to get a driving license in Bangalore. My father possessed 182 cars over a period of 12 years, and he would have possessed still more but for the period that the Jagir came under the court of wards due to mismanagement of the Jagir and the period lost when, during the World War, car manufacture was stopped for military vehicles. It was in Calcutta in 1952 that whilst watching motor racing being conducted at the abandoned airstrip at Alipur on Sundays that the bug bit me. I was so impressed by a green Morgan Plus 4 that I decided to have one such car and race him at that class, 2000cc plus. I discovered that both Morgan Plus 4 and the standard Vanguard had the same Triumph engine, 2000 cc's. Therefore, my first act was to procure economically a standard Vanguard which was involved in an accident with the engine and chassis in good condition. To my immense luck, on 6 June 1953, I got a completely smashed up 1952 Vanguard for Rs 2,500. The Calcutta Motor Skirts Club Conducting these races was the first club in India to do so. The administration was 100% white, and so were most of the drivers. I then had to meet a guy who could build a car. Through frequent inquiries at such race meets, I met a marshal named Nick Carriapit, who advised me that his boss, an Englishman working in Turner Morrison's Shalimar Tar company, could help. I met Robin Davis, and he readily agreed to take up the task and put Nick as the foreman. All Turner Morrison's cars were serviced here, and they were easy to handle mine. He wanted his friend, Frenchman Henry Ribot, to assist him. We named the car ARD Special after our three names. Many foreigners were under contract not to take part in risky sports like mountaineering and skydiving, and hence they had a deep interest to see me, what they visualized for themselves. A specialist tinker and I designed the shape of the car. Due to the Vanguard's rear design, I could not keep the bulk of the back, and this did affect the driving, especially when coming out of the chicane when a car will backlash. The car had no doors and no glass. This was done for safety. The chassis were cut, cross-braced for strength, the steering lowered, apart from other modifications. Suffice to say, the final cost came to rupees 6,500, a big amount in those days for a hobby. There were also round, hollow openings in the front of the cars. These were positioned such that when racing, they acted as ducts to cool the brakes. When not racing, I could fit sealed headlights in them and enjoy my evening jaunts to Calcutta's nightlife at Furpur's Princess Golden Slipper and the 300 Club. The abandoned airstrip where Calcutta Motorsports Club held its races had a course length of 1.4 miles with 2 hairpin bends and a chicane. Most of the races were not scratch races. The handicaps were based on the best timings from the previous meets. Even in 1953 there were some crowds, as the statesman gave some impetus. A fortnightly magazine, Spotlight, edited by Jack Wilkes, an excellent motorcyclist who raced in the Isle of Man, gave a detailed coverage. My competitors were all whites. Some names that come to mind are Sandy Lumsden, a Bentley, Robertson, a Rover, Eddie Isaac, who drove the Jaguar SS100, Billy Dewar, a Garage, Alan Ramsey, a Lancia, Jeff Budd, a Morgan Plus 4, and as I said, my car was referred to as ARD. Some of these men were the pioneers of motor racing in India. Here I cover some of the races with photos, extracts from Spotlight, and maybe a comment. Alan Ramsey was considered the best driver at my time, but I had the pleasure of beating him in some races, especially in a Morris Minor, where we had the same type of cars and there was no handicap. On 20th of December 1953, I won 2 races. First I won the 3-lap race, beating Alan Ramsey, both of us in 1951 Morris Minors, starting scratch. And the next, the 10-lap race, it was my first 10-lap race. Though the distance itself was short, there was deadly arranged chicane and 2 hairpin bends, and I felt that the brakes may be the answer for the winner. The race comes to mind when I witnessed whilst racing the crash of my fellow racer, Jeff Isaac. He was coming out of the chicane on the second last lap when he crashed. He jumped off the tarmac and went into the grass. His red car finally came to a rest and Jeff walked out without a scratch. Alan Ranley was not in this race, but they were both Eddie Isaac in a Jaguar SS100 and Robertson in a Stick Special. I beat Robertson by a whisker, though we were both handicapped together and he had a faster car. We are both pictured here. Just 2 years of this high-strung activity brought an end to my racing hobby. It was before marriage. I was made aware of my future responsibilities. Thus, quitting was made easier as my last race ended in a crash with a right wheel, front wheel shearing off its connecting rod, me hitting the fence and walking back shamelessly to the pits without finishing the race. That my short flirtation with motorsports will be history, as it has now been held that I am a pioneer in racing cars in India. The Calcutta Motorsports Club, Auto India, and the main auto website team BHP have acknowledged that I am the first Indian to build a sports car and race and win in it at an official circuit in India. This was in 1953 and have published several articles and photos therein. By not including several items that make up an autobiography, I do not mean that other things took a back seat. On the contrary, my family has always been first in any consideration, and my wife even more. I gave up going abroad for further education and also stayed on a silly job of making cigarettes for a multinational company as I deeply loved my wife and did not want to take any chances in losing her, chasing my career and rock the boat. Call me a funk and I will agree. I did not agree to be promoted as this will entail a posting that will interfere with the children's study. Call it stupid and I say maybe. I made a bold decision to retire 8 years earlier and she backed me. That's my wife. And finally able to put her gifted talent to work. Call it lucky and bold and I will agree. All said and done, I, without fear or favor, have put my dearest wife above everything else and will continue to do so after 63 years. As far as my daughter, Sagri, and son, Vidyut are concerned, I admit I have not been a father that I believe today that a father should not teach and hear. Those were the days when the father did not come to close contact and lose touch with their children. Anyway, that is not an excuse and I regret that. Yes, I regret that. Well, I'm here focusing this autobiography on myself essentially. I will tell you about my ancestry, my working career, my hobbies, my home and my philosophy. I sometimes regret having wasted 27 youthful years with a multinational company making cigarettes. However, this British MNC treated me and my family extremely well. Their training, rewards for good work, and general practices were without bias. This was particularly true as long as the British style was in vogue and they could afford this style when competition was not threatening. The deterioration was gradual as far as impartiality and discipline were concerned as Indianization progressed. My job was such that I accomplished most tasks and got myself time to study whatever. I used the time to study the management of all work with mathematical models and tools. They were then PERT as a tool, linear programming, operation research, value analysis, ratio analysis, and finally game theory. I could only put into practice two models, value analysis and PERT, without a computer, through our purchasing and engineering departments. A part of my work was product programming. This meant allocation to each of our 5 factories certain brands in certain quantities to supply to main costs and manufacturing costs too. This presented a gigantic permutation and combination problem insolvable by a human being. The previous method was hit and miss. I convinced the company to get a computer programmer to do this work through linear programming. I got the computer programmer to carry out the work in Tata's mainframe computer in Bombay. It was then, those days. The company has now grown into a full-fledged global service which is now ITC Infotech. My formal education was in Madras, culminating in an MSc degree in chemistry from Presidency College, though mathematical recreations was my passion. Interestingly, my great-grandfather had instituted the Jagirdar of Arni Prize gold medal for physics and chemistry, which medal was won by both C.V. Raman and Chandrasekhar, who later went on to win the Nobel Prize in that subject. I was nowhere in that area. As a youngster, I was always interested in puzzles and board games. I remember an incident when the World War broke out and Madras tasted its first bomb of the German war cruiser Emden in 1941. We were packed off then to our Jagirdar Arni. Not knowing what to do with my time, I mixed up 10 boxes of jigsaw puzzles, tore out the pictures, loaded myself with cardboard and plasticine to keep me occupied till our return. I also took it puzzle books by the masters Sam Dewdney and Sam Lloyd. Then I developed a habit of reading and solving and developing mathematically oriented puzzles with deeper interest in magic squares and NIM. Mathematical recreation was now my main hobby, and after the war I set about having a small library. I kept seriously off chess because I knew that once I got hooked there, I could not get out. The recipient of these games and puzzles was only a big notebook which I thought of publishing one day, giving them the games another dimension. Tired of only reading, developing and solving on paper, I started using a carpenter to make wooden models of toys like the Tower of Hanoi, Shatai, bridges of Königsberg, Peg Solitaire, and things like that. Though I continued to live the life of a normal MNC executive, I was losing interest in games. I was now over 50, and the prospect of retirement or non-retirement were not clear. However, my frustration ended. To my utter joy, in 1981, my brother gifted me a Sinclair ZX81 computer with a 1K memory. From now on, there was no looking back. With a 16K RAM expansion, I programmed battleships and cruisers and started developing knots and crosses and so on. Then we went on a US holiday and got a Commodore VIC-20, where I was helped by my daughter Sagri to learn. I soon sought early retirement as I thought it would be good for my talented wife and myself. My tryst with computers now began when I was 53. Further games development followed, and now, with the arrival of the PC XT, I was able to make more than 50 games. I put them on CNET and Bulletin Service, the forerunner to Internet, and had very impressive downloads as there were very little competition. When we wanted to email, we used Pine, P-I-N-E, and to download or upload, we used FTP, File Transfer Protocol. In 1998, a newly established gaming company, Ziff Davis, wanted me to allow them to place these games on a CD-ROM and allow it for free use. I accepted, and there were about 20,000 to 50,000 downloads of these games, which were titled 50 Great Mathematical Games. Most of these games were solitaire or played against a computer. Due to the rapid progress made by computers in different platforms of Java and Flash, the use of the mouse, I was not in a position to port them due to my having to learn a new language at this age. It must be understood that I worked alone in developing these mind games. However, I converted some of them to Flash through a Russian rent-a-coder, Oleg Kolinsky, at rupees 800 a game, and made my first website, mindgamesarnis.com, for which some puzzles are revealed here. When the cell phone era arrived around 2002, the cell phone markets were pretty well established in the US and Finland. Remember, there were no cell phones on the market yet in India. I posted a requirement on the International Games Development Association regarding developing cell phone games based on my DOS games. You can see at the bottom right the original DOS games called Arni games. A guy, Chris Burke from Seattle, who was a games consultant in Motorola, said that he was willing to do it. He got well versed in QBasic and J2ME. We developed 8 games. We even got Nokia, the top company, then interested and signed an NDA agreement with them. But in the last minute, they backed off as Nokia Gage was more important, though it failed later. However, Chris tried 2 of them in the market on his own, and sadly they failed. I told him to put it up as no cost, but he wished to get it paid up straight off. Remember, I was trying to export games of these cell phones when India had not yet developed a market for mobiles. In May 2005, Sudoku puzzles appeared. I knew they were derived from the great mathematician Euler's work. I knew there was a 2-person game in it and need not remain a solitaire puzzle. I worked on it and came up with a board game which can be converted into a computer game. Once again, I went to several games forums and again to ITDA for partners. I found this avatar guy, Purple Blade. He was none other than the charming Sumit Mehra. He came to Hyderabad, got me a team, and we just about finished when the team disintegrated for rosier pastures and left me thin and dry. I still felt and feel there is a charming game in it. There was a long period of inactivity during 2006 to 2009 when I embellished many of my DOS games and gave it free to online realgames.com to Maruti Shankar for their players. They were flash games and I started with a thank you note to me. That was my only condition. Around 2014, I was approached by a few professionals, gaming professionals who work in a gaming company, who knew about me, whether I could design a solitaire multiplayer game which is based on poker. I accepted the challenge and I came up with two such after 2 weeks. One was based on Scrabble, but the other one was a board game. They asked for the latter. This again reached the 80% stage where the team disintegrated due to other financial enhancements for the players. They, however, placed the incomplete product on for practice in the market. I don't know what this is, to practice in the market. Soon after, in 2016, the CEO of the Seven Seas Entertainment Center asked me to design any game of my choice which will be different. My mind got back once again, invoking the immortal mind of Euler, and set about designing a game with color and shape and placement rules. No numbers, no alphabet. Once again, I was let down after the game was 90% ready by the person who matters. I was having such rotten luck with 3 games struck at the final stages, and I was not yet getting younger. I was now 88. But little did I know that I was to be present on 11th November 2016 to receive an award for being the first and oldest games developer in India from the Deputy Chief Minister of Hyderabad. NASCOM Games in India is the largest and official center for games developers, and this conference was being held in Hyderabad in November 2016. What I mean by this is that I was recognized as the first developer of computer games in India. A car was sent along with a member of NGDC, and I was felicitated in front of 1,400 Indian and foreign delegates and later interviewed. A virtual reality headset was presented to me as this was the theme for the year. It was indeed an honor for me as I had not yet put a successful game in the market.
I would like to know, how do you feel about the NASCOM event here?
Oh, absolutely awesome.
It's
Awesome.
what
I never believed that games can lead up to a big business and with so many participants. I thought people finish their day's work and they play an outdoor game, but this is something unbelievable. Finally, NASCOM, I cannot believe that you can have our minister talking about other things and developments. This is unbelievable.
What do you think of the development in gaming, from going from 64-bit to now intense 4K, 8K gaming?
When I had these games, it was, I tell you, I read books of Dudney and Sam Lloyd, and that's inspiration. Tremendous inspiration, even today. Then when the ZX81 came, Sinclair ZX81, I've not had a single rupee from the games. The one that I have spent money on developing flash games of mine to an Ukrainian at 800 rupees a game, and he gave me that game after translating my game, and I played that game and I enjoyed it. It was my game and I enjoyed it. He never played it. So
apart from my hobby of mathematical recreations and designing and playing mind games, I am interested in digital art with a focus on fractal art. Art is also the pursuit of truth from a different perspective. Both have beauty. I think the numerals and their operators 2, 7, beta, square root are so distinctly removed from lines, shapes, curves, and colors of art, adding to the difference. Besides, classical art had for its tools pen, brush, colors, and canvas. It is still art if the tools are refined, such as computer and the software, and there is basically no difference in its expression. Though Fractint specifically concentrates on graphical displays where you select the numerical parameters, there are other softwares where you interplay with several different objects with using virtual camera and other peripherals. When I say this, I refer to Bryce and Terragen, which are 3D rendering programs specializing in landscape. I personally like the next three factors: the scene, Ganesh, and the horse. When I say this, I refer to Bryce and Terragen, which are 3D generating rendering programs specializing in landscape. Bryce, Terragen, and the fractal generating programs which I have been using from 1993 are now being looked at with more interest as virtual reality is the thing to go for now. You are seeing my work with Terragen as I speak. In the programs I have described, the objects, the scenes, and placement are by physical manipulation of the mouse, sliding bars, physical domes, and such icons displayed on the screen. On the other hand, with Power, you describe the scene in text, in this case by programming in C++, a scene descriptive language, SDL, and a ray tracer reads it. Though the words per se are highly descriptive and distinctive, I found the syntax and placement very difficult. My experience with Power is therefore limited to producing images and physical objects with no imagination as such. Since I was among the very few who used this program in India nearly 20 years back, 1998, the computer magazine PC Quest featured my images and animations as virtual reality in two of their publications, a praise I was not worthy of this work. My biggest drawback is I do not stay on one subject and try and master it. I want to experiment with each and everything I fancy. Even on the subject of art, I am presently experimenting with 3D animation and designing 3D furniture with Google SketchUp program. I have uploaded about 30 models to the Google warehouse. I believed that the first action of a human child is to search and find, and this activity engages the mind throughout his journey in space and time. The next thing that the child discovers subconsciously is that there is a puzzle in it, posing a challenge. When he finds a solution, however simple it is, there is happiness and relief. All this is happening without us being consciously aware. I myself have searched, and presently, at the age of 90, I believe in a few things which I have noting down. I believe that the older Indian people have lost much of their voice and succumbed to the political environment. They have lost their ability to be themselves and are guided easily by hearsay and ancient doctrine. However, I see a sea change in the ones under 18 who are our future. Now I start expounding my views on nationalism and politics. We have gone too far or carried too far in this nationalism. Even our Rabindranath Tagore wrote, nationalism is a great menace. It is a particular thing which for years has been at the bottom of India's troubles, unquote. Just because I was born an Indian, why should it be my duty to die and defend the nation at all times and at all cost? Why should I defend India if it goes to war on Kashmir? Governments were given some powers to solve such issues, and in my opinion, they could have solved them even if they had to seek the United Nations or the World Court. That is, if we were justified in claiming Kashmir. They failed for 60 years, and if now they call upon the people to fight, then the PM and his cabinet should lead his army from the front and show us how to fight and die. I say this because I could have been born anywhere, and I, as a human, am thinking. Freedom of thought should be a right passionately protected by the United Nations. Are pacifists and anti-war demonstrators traitors? Are thinkers and writers who write on humanity but criticize their country traitors? What is now being proposed is Hindu ritual nationalism or command nationalism by a party which is born out of the murder of the greatest national leader produced by a country. Let me pose a so-called anti-national question. Let's not dismiss it as stupid, but try seeing it from another angle. I know that Bernard Russell, Nobel laureate, raised similar questions at the end of World War II. Are not Jawaharlal Nehru and Muhammad Ali Jinnah traitors to the old British India? Which had unified all Indian ruler states and other principalities into India by breaking it up and then becoming the leaders of the two Tukras in spite of Mahatma Gandhi's warnings? Were not Lord Mountbatten and Clement Attlee, the British Prime Minister, guilty of initially breaking up the British Empire in spite of warnings from Winston Churchill? The decisions that Gorbachev and Yeltsin made may have brought about the breakup of the Soviet Union into 15 countries and may have been a traitorous act as seen by Stalin. But Russia, are they not patriots? Different histories will make different patriots into traitors and vice versa. But if we do not think rationally and fall prey to command nationalism, we desert humanity. Love of country isn't natural. It's not something you're born with. It's foisted upon you in the home, in the school, on TV, or in the workplace. And yet, most people accept it without reflection. Finally, I give a quote from H.G. Wells, quote, "Our true nationalism is mankind," unquote. Let me now make my views on secularism. Secular means not taking any religions into consideration for structuring a civil code or law for the making of a secular society. It does not mean acceptance and tolerance towards all religions, their philosophy, customs and practices. By such modifications, we might be condoning unknowingly a sense of superiority in some categories of society and the corresponding evil of reservation, civil antagonism, and violence that some religions seem to tolerate, and even create a subverted legal system where even justice and equality will stand compromised. My position is that civil law must replace religious law, customs, and practices to effectively work. Why should religions or political processions interfere with my right to use the road? Why should the call to pray using the loudspeakers of the mosque be allowed to disturb my sleep? Why should mass bathing, Kumbh Mela and Hindu funeral rites disposals pollute my waters and spread disease? Why should Vastu, Rahu Kalam, ritual of namaz and several superstitions with their effect on finance and time be allowed for the taxpayers' money to be wasted? Is this the secularism which we want? Coming back to the Constitution. When redrafting the Constitution, apart from dealing with the tasks of governing and some directive principles, it should be a mission document, a new religion for the country, and its role in promoting happiness on earth. Its task is to bring its citizens to show compassion and love towards all and help in bringing about peace and understanding. It should endeavor to make its citizens ethically responsible. It should promote respect for elders by youth and at the same time emphasize the need for elders to understand youth. God should not be a part of the discussion. In other words, it should take over the best answer religions give to their believers for human behavior and goals. In that document, the words secular, nationalism, patriotism should be defined in a wider and more rational manner. Staying on the Constitution, I can say that I am very proud of two fundamental rights given in our Constitution, and it should remain. One, it shall be the duty of every citizen of India to develop a scientific temper, humanism, and a spirit of inquiry and reform. Article 51A. Second one, that all Indians enjoy a guaranteed fundamental right to privacy that is intrinsic to life and liberty and thus come under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. And this privacy includes the right to be left alone, freedom of thought, etc. I would also like this clause, pursuit of happiness, which is in the American Constitution, inserted in our Constitution. The pursuit of happiness is defined as a fundamental right to freely pursue joy and live life in a way that makes you happy, as long as you don't do anything illegal or violate the rights of others. This should be a great thing in our Constitution. Before emphasized at the start of us being born with a mission to handle the puzzle after searching, notice that the more I attempt to find out, the more parts and more doubts I face. But even having accomplished next to nothing, the journey is perhaps more enlightening and pleasurable than the solutions. I don't believe Gandhi would be pleased with our present India having won independence from the British. I don't think he would prefer today's independent India to what he dreamed as Swaraj. Possesses all spheres of life. Not even a world record GNP would satisfy him. He wanted economic freedom for the toiling millions, free from government control. I believe that Gandhi was practically minded and what he preached could be done. I believe leaders that came after Gandhi lacked the guts to follow some of his Purna Swaraj ideas. Unfortunate for us. I don't believe people, whatever be their standing, if I'm not convinced about the situation, even though I might be the odd one out. I notice that most people will follow a popular icon without any reservations, even when in doubt, for fear of any repercussions. I also have a habit of verifying the facts after the show and even advising others of what I found. I believe truth is a better option to diplomacy. I believe that mathematics is a subject more aligned with philosophy and art than physics and chemistry. My argument is that mathematics is essential for such sciences as physics and chemistry, but philosophy and arts are lessons for mathematics. I believe that what separates a human being from an animal is appreciation of visual art and music. If a person can't appreciate that, I consider him subhuman. The existence of God or the non-existence of God cannot be proved as there is no clear understanding of where to find him. However, if the believer gets comfort in his belief, then God exists for him. And I believe that his comfort should be our true concern. My belief is that the existence or not of God is a non-issue in our life. On a final reflection, I believe I have received much more than what I gave to my environment, by which I mean to my friends, relations, and my state. I admit I could have been far more generous and less selfish.